So back in 1605, a seriously audacious plot was hatched that almost completely redrew the map of English power. We're diving into the Gunpowder Plot, an incredible story of conspiracy and betrayal that came terrifyingly close to working. Let's break down exactly what happened. Okay, so I want you to picture this. It's a cold, dark cellar, deep underneath the Houses of Parliament. The air is just thick with tension. And in the shadows, there's this lone figure guarding a terrifying secret. A secret that's literally moments away from being discovered. So, what was he guarding? 36 barrels of gunpowder. And we're not talking a small amount here. This was a massive stockpile, all secretly smuggled into place, just waiting to be unleashed. I mean, the sheer destructive power in that one room was enough to completely wipe England's entire political establishment off the map. Just gone. Which, of course, brings up two huge questions, right? Who was this guy in the dark, and what on earth was his endgame with a plan this big? Well, it's time to find out. So you have to wonder, how does a plan this big, this meticulously planned, come crashing down in just a few hours? Well, that's our first stop, the moment it was all discovered. I mean, we are talking literally at the 11th hour. The authorities act, they storm the cellars, and there he is. They catch him red-handed, fuses and matches right there with him. His name was Guy Fawkes, and finding him was about to foil the entire operation. But, catching Guy Fawkes is really just the ends of the story. The real question is why? Why was he even there? What drives someone to risk everything like that? To get that answer, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. And that brings us to the very heart of the matter, the Catholic conspiracy that was the engine behind this whole plot. See, this wasn't some random act of chaos. Not at all. The Gunpowder Plot was a very precise, religiously motivated plan. It was put together by a group of English Catholics who felt, well, completely persecuted under the Protestant king, James I. Their target wasn't just a building, it was the king himself. And their ambition was absolutely immense. We're not just talking about an assassination here. This was a full-blown revolution attempt. The goal was to wipe out the entire Protestant leadership in one single fiery blast, and then, in the chaos, put a Catholic monarch back on the throne. Talk about changing the course of history. Now, you can't pull off something this big on your own, right? You need a team. The leader, the real mastermind, was a man named Robert Catesby. He was the charismatic one who got everyone on board. And our man Guy Fawkes, he was their specialist, the explosives expert with military experience, tasked with the most critical job of all, lighting the fuse. And the plan itself? Wow, it was breathtakingly audacious. It wasn't just, let's sneak some gunpowder into a cellar. No, they timed it perfectly for the state opening of Parliament. Think about it. That's the one moment when the king, his family, and the entire Protestant elite are all gathered in a single room. The idea was simple and brutal. Kill them all in one go, and then install a new Catholic ruler while everyone was still reeling. But, as we all know, even the most meticulous plans have a fatal flaw. And for these conspirators, their whole plot was just about to unravel. It all started with a letter. Just days before the planned attack, these chilling words show up in an anonymous note. It seems someone on the inside, or close to it, got cold feet. They wanted to warn a Catholic nobleman, a Lord Monteagle, to stay away from Parliament on November 5th. And that single letter, that changed everything. Lord Monteagle didn't ignore it. He took it straight to the authorities. The vague warning of a terrible blow was enough to spark a full-on investigation. And just like that, the plotter's secret was out. And you can just feel how quickly everything accelerated from there. The letter arrives in late October, the investigation begins. By the night of November 4th, the authorities are getting ready to search the cellars. And then, in the early hours of November 5th, just hours before it was all supposed to go down, Guy Fawkes is found, the gunpowder is seized, and the conspiracy is stopped dead in its tracks. So the plot failed, but its story was far from over. The aftermath created a legacy that echoes all the way to this day, and it's all captured in that famous phrase, "Remember, remember." The consequences for the conspirators were, as you can imagine, swift and brutal. Fawkes and his allies were all captured, interrogated, and ultimately executed for high treason. The state made a very public and a very gruesome example of them. The plot's failure ended up creating two totally different legacies. On the one hand, for English Catholics, it was an absolute disaster. It led to decades of even harsher laws and persecution. But on the other hand, for the crown, it was a massive propaganda victory, a perfect story of how the good, rightful king was saved from treacherous enemies. And this is where things get really fascinating. This act of failed treason wasn't just suppressed, it was transformed into a national celebration. November 5th became known as Guy Fawkes Night, or Bonfire Night, where people all across Britain light bonfires and fireworks to commemorate the king's safety and the plot's failure. And of course, there's that famous rhyme that's echoed through British culture for over 400 years, making sure that the story is never, ever forgotten. It's taught to school kids and recited around bonfires, cementing the whole event right into the national memory. Which leaves us with a final, kind of thought-provoking question. Most celebrations are about victory and success, but here we have an entire tradition that's built around a spectacular failure. It really makes you wonder, what does it say about a culture when one of its biggest annual celebrations is all about remembering a disaster that almost happened?